Good morning. I'm Eric Richardson with INHR News. Today, we will hear from two experts in artificial intelligence about the risks and risk mitigation strategies involved in responsible AI in the military and how international cooperation might help to reduce these risks. First, we'll go to Stockholm, where we'll speak with an expert on AI and biosecurity about the risk that terrorists might use artificial intelligence to gain access to sensitive biological or chemical weapons. Second, we'll go to Washington, D.C., where a noted author on drone warfare will talk to us about the need for an AI incidents agreement. First, we go to Stockholm. Welcome, Jules Palayer of the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Jules, why are so many experts concerned about the intersection between biotechnology and artificial intelligence?
Broadly speaking, recent advances in generative AI have come with concerns that AI could make the access to bioweapons easier for malicious actors. In this group, we can put malicious non-state actors, organized criminal groups, terrorist organizations. On the one hand, you have large language models that bring a set of biorisks, and on the other, biological design tools that bring another set of biorisks. Then there is the technical combination of both. Large language models, or LLMs, are trained on large textual datasets and could lower the barrier to access critical knowledge to produce harmful bioagents. Biological design tools, or BDTs, which are AI-powered tools used for pharmaceutical research and bioengineering, typically to find new drugs or vaccines or improve our scientific understanding of biological processes, could be misused by resourceful malicious actors to create new and harmful bioagents or make existing ones more lethal, contagious, or antibiotic resistant. So the concerns are really around making large language models and biological design tools safe from misuses that could lead to biocrime, bioterrorism, or bioweapons.
How does artificial intelligence magnify the risks?
AI could be leveraged to lower or eliminate the technological barriers and tacit knowledge needed to develop, design, and disseminate a bioagent. And this is especially the case for large language models. The fear is that these tools could democratize the access to critical information about the development and dissemination of bioagents. Artificial intelligence could also eventually enhance the characteristics of these bioagents. According to some, AI could even be used to create completely new and unknown bioagents.
Do existing international treaties or the UN processes already address these issues? If not, why not?
Both the Biological Weapons Convention and the Chemical Weapons Convention set very clear prohibition on this type of weapons. Whether biological or chemical weapons are designed, developed, or disseminated using artificial intelligence is completely irrelevant as far as the prohibition is concerned.
What are some alternatives to improve our governance of AI?
The prohibition regimes set by these two conventions need to adapt to technological advancement that could impact their implementation. And this is the space in which more international cooperation is needed to strengthen our capacity to prevent AI misuses in this domain. For example, the Biological Weapons Convention does not have a body that systematically reviews the impact of emerging technologies on biosecurity, which is something that the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons does by a scientific advisory body and a recently inaugurated Center for Chemistry and Technology. Both bodies ensure that the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons adapts to fast-paced technological and scientific changes. State parties to the Biological Weapons Convention should work towards the establishment of such mechanisms to monitor how AI and other emerging technologies impact the Convention's goal and provide also technical advice on these issues to state parties of the Convention.
How do we get governments and international regulators the knowledge and training that they need in order that they can effectively govern artificial intelligence?
As AI emerges as a new technology with new applications, new risks emerge as well. So they need technical assistance to make sure that the goals of the conventions these states ratified are upheld. So technical assistance can mean investigating new mechanisms to create pathogens, new tools that are used for genuine scientific research that could be misused, and maybe even new verification mechanisms to make sure that we can identify harmful bioagents. So it's just to make sure that we keep pace with the technological advancements and we make sure that the biological weapons conventions are reached.
Does it have to be the UN who provides this technical assistance? Couldn't a third party, like a university, also help in the training?
It does not have to be the UN or a new treaty, since the prohibition still stands. And arguably, we already have an agreement among many states that they should work together to prevent the potential misuse of artificial intelligence in biotechnology. And I'm thinking about the Bletchley Declaration, which came after the UK AI Safety Summit, which took place in the UK in 2023.
What can individual states or private companies do to improve governance of AI and biotechnology?
The private sector plays a key role in contributing to preventing these misuses. Companies should keep working on strong testing and evaluation practices before releasing models and take steps to mitigate the risk of misuse of their technologies through licensing, know your customer mechanisms, or by introducing technical fixes such as anti-tamper mechanisms or geofencing.
Thank you, Jules. Good afternoon. Joining us from Washington, D.C. is Dr. Paul Scharre. Thank you, Dr. Scharre, for joining INHR News.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Scharre, what are AI incidents, and why is it important that the international community adopt new protocols about them?
Well, one of the concerns as we see militaries adopting AI is that we could see accidents. We could see AI systems do unexpected things. We've seen this with AI systems in other contexts, with self-driving cars, for example, that they can make mistakes that have fatal consequences. Now, that's a terrible tragedy when it happens to individuals, but when we could see something similar with military AI systems, the consequences could be global in scale. And we could see an international incident that might come because of some accident an AI system makes. So it's very important that countries look for ways to reduce those risks and manage some of those potential challenges.
What might be the sources of an AI incident or accident in the military context?
AI systems can fail in a variety of ways, some of which can be very surprising. So there may be a flaw in an AI system that we don't find out until it gets out there in the real world, and then we see some kind of incident that occurs. Sometimes this can happen if the training data for a machine learning system does not accurately represent the real world. Maybe the training data is in a different environment. The military system was trained for a desert, for example, and then it's employed into a non-desert environment, and the AI system may not perform correctly. Or it could be just because out in the real world, there are other people, there's other vehicles, there's civilian shipping and airliners and other things that might confuse the AI system that it's not ready for, and then it might do something unexpected and maybe even something dangerous.
But how can you investigate AI incidents without interfering with state sovereignty or national security issues?
There are going to be concerns about national security and sovereignty, and so countries are going to want to do their own investigations, which is understandable. But what's important is that we find ways to increase transparency among nations so that if there is some dangerous incident, let's say an autonomous ship at sea accidentally collides with another vessel, well, other countries might wonder, was that an accident or was that intentional? And so countries are going to want to have ways of being able to communicate to show, hey, we did an investigation, this was an accident, here's the data to prove that, we didn't mean for that to happen, so that we avoid things escalating further. So finding that methods of trust and transparency is going to be really important among nations.
How do we convince states that it is in their interest to allow for the transparency that you discuss and to actually permit investigation of AI incidents?
Well, one of the things that we can do now is start talking about and acknowledging these risks. That when we're seeing AI and autonomous systems deployed out into the real world, there are going to be situations where they do something surprising. Here are the risks, and then countries put in place better procedures up front on testing these systems so that we can make those risks as low as possible, but also that countries agree to some rules of the road, some best practices to minimize these potential misunderstandings. And we have these in other areas. We have rules of the road for aircraft and for vessels at sea to reduce the risk of collision or near collision incidents. And some of those rules are going to have to be updated for autonomous systems, as we now see more AI and autonomous systems being integrated into these domains.
What level of international cooperation involving AI in the military do you see as possible?
Now, diplomacy takes time, so we're unlikely to get to the finish line in, say, the next year, but we could start some of those conversations and get countries talking about, well, what are some of these challenges that we're going to face as we see more AI and autonomy integrated into militaries? In 5 years, we might see some early agreements and some norms that start to come into place about what appropriate behavior looks like. And if we do this right, countries really invest in this, we can be in a place where, say, 15 years from now, we could have a much safer world if there are appropriate procedures in place for testing systems, verifying their behavior, and then increasing transparency among states to reduce the risk of these kind of incidents.
Your book, Four Battlegrounds, talks about AI in the military and the competition for supremacy. Why is Four Battlegrounds relevant to the discussion we're having today about international cooperation?
Well, we saw that during the Industrial Revolution, nations rose and fell on the global stage based on how rapidly they adopted new industrial technology. And AI poses the same transformative potential. So my recent book, Four Battlegrounds, talks about these four key areas of competition in AI: data, computer chips, human talent, and institutions, the organizations that are needed to take these raw inputs and turn them into useful AI applications. And whichever countries lead in these areas will lead an AI-driven future. So there's a lot of interest to try to better understand how do countries capitalize on these opportunities and who's in the best position to do so.
Even Bill Gates has recommended your book, Army of None, about autonomous weapon systems. What lessons can we draw from that book about governance of AI in the military?
Well, I think there's no question that we are at a pivotal moment in human history with autonomous weapons, where the technology is making them possible, and we're on the verge of seeing them deployed in combat in areas like in Ukraine, for example. And the real question is, are we going to cross this threshold as humanity where we begin to then delegate life and death decisions on the battlefield to machines? Are we comfortable with that? Are we comfortable with a lethal drone having as much autonomy as a self-driving car? And what are the legal and moral and ethical implications of humanity crossing that threshold? We've seen discussions underway globally on this topic for the last decade, and they're growing in new fora like the United Nations. So I think this is a vitally important issue. It's one we want to get right. And it's really important that not just countries and diplomats and military professionals, but really all of us are invested in this discussion because we all have a stake in this world that we're building.
Thank you, Dr. Shari.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.